Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today with us. We are very excited to share the following hour with all of you. The aim of this webinar, as all of you know, is to share our vision on diversity and inclusion, which is a hot topic that is currently present in all the strategic agendas of the companies. Being more specific, we would like to share our vision on how Spain is progressing compared to European neighbors after having completed several projects on this matter with our multinational, some of our multinational clients. But first of all, let me start with a short introduction of ourselves. I am Saltor, managing partner and founder of Saltor Talent. We are an executive search and a strategic human consulting firm. We are the exclusive Spanish partner of Kennedy Executive Search, which is a global network of boutique firms with presence in more than 20 countries. We also have here with us Álvaro Cárcel, the Executive Search Director of Saltor Talent, who will be in charge of moderating the webinar and the Q&A towards the end of the session. We are very lucky to have among us as guest speakers Caroline Frisenberg and Lars Johansson, two seasoned professionals with a strong track record and expertise developing diversity and inclusion projects with a European and global scope. Caroline is the diversity and inclusion practice leader at Kennedy Executive Search, and Lars Johansson is the global director of public affairs and governmental relations at Volvo, a leading and best-in-class company in regards to diversity and inclusion. He's an advisor of our network and collaborates with Kennedy Executive Search in diversity and inclusion projects. Just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded with the aim to share it with you and the ones that are not able to join us today. So after this short introduction, let me hand over to you, Álvaro Cárcel. So Álvaro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Iñaki. I will be very brief because we have a lot to cover in a short period of time. We aim this webinar to last 45 minutes, more or less, so that we leave 10-15 minutes for Q&A until 6 p.m. To make the session as smooth as possible and avoid disruptions. Everyone except the facilitators and speakers will be muted. And of course, if you have any questions during the webinar, please send them to me in a direct message, and I will keep track of all of them. During the Q&A at the end of the session, we will go through the questions and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible. But in case we do not have time to cover all of them, we will be more than happy to take it offline in a separate one-to-one call. Caroline, Lars, thanks for being here today with us. And now let me hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Iñaki and Álvaro, and thank you so much for having me here. Lars and I are delighted to share with you all here what we have, our vision, our strategy also for helping organizations to drive diversity and inclusion. We have over the last couple of years or year and a half managed a massive project on a global scale on diversity and inclusion, benchmarking international organizations in many different countries, what their D&I strategies have been, what the outcomes have been, and to use that as an inspiration, use that as the benchmark to understand how organizations can use this to manage diversity and inclusion within their own organization. And as you all know, European countries are very different and they're all managing diversity and inclusion in very, very different ways. Myself and Lars actually are both from Sweden. Sweden and Scandinavian countries are very much ahead when it comes to diversity and inclusion. We will show you some examples of what Volvo has been doing for the last 15 years. And we're also going to give you an introduction of what we have seen in the market, what happens in Spain, concrete examples of what international organizations are doing, and also how to measure it, because at the end of the day, we need to show progress We need to keep the momentum in order for changes to happen. So I would like to share with you my screen right now so that I can present you and show you our work. Do you see my screen? It's all good?
Yes.
So just as I said, show you some progress in Spain. What is the difference between Spanish organization and international organizations? Also give you an overview of how we use, so we call it success factors or tools to really be able to understand, to analyze where do we stand, where is my organization today, and in which direction are we heading towards? Are we going straight forward? Are we going backwards, or are we standing still? And these are really important measurements to take in order to have everybody on board. We know that to make anything happen in an organization, you need several stakeholders on board, and that can be tricky. And we will, as I said, finish with Q&A. So when we are working with diversity and inclusion, of course, we're always working on trying to increase the level of awareness. And again, we have seen so many different levels of awareness amongst European countries, but we all come back to why is diversity and inclusion important? Why is it a strategic initiative of most organizations today? Well, because we are driving innovation, broadening the perspectives, understanding our customers, being more creative, being more efficient. And of course, at the end of the day, yes, the organization, we're looking to be profitable, but also the prosperity, having a better work environment and also being inclusive. So this is just how we work with our clients, and also, of course, how we work with people to really highlight why are we doing this. And again, the awareness or resistance sometimes varies depending on country, depending on industry, and this we also need to highlight. When we are working with pillars, the diversity pillars, there are many different pillars, of course. And I always say it depends on which industry you're in, depends on which business you're in, and which country you're in. What are the challenges? But sorry, within Kennedy, we are focusing on gender. We are focusing on generation. We also focus on our culture and different backgrounds. We're also focusing on the LGBTI community and disability. So these are the 5 pillars that we have worked on, that we have assessed within Spain. What have they been doing, the organizations, and also, as I said, in other European countries. So this is the reason why you will see these terminology going forward. But I also want to highlight, and I also want to make sure that there are many other pillars that could be very interesting depending on which industry that you're in. So if you're looking at the progress in Spain, and I'm going to go through each of these pillars, what have been done. We have some Spanish success stories, and we have international benchmarks. When it comes to the gender, so how do we address gender? And there are many different ways of doing that. We have organizations that say, especially organizations that are struggling with the gender balance, in order to really get the motion, get the train rolling, so to speak. You need to sometimes you need to take some drastic measures. We have organizations that only recruit female candidates for external recruitment, whereas internally it's then 50-50, 50 male, 50 females. This is one way of really getting ahead and really getting traction on the gender imbalance. Pay gap per organization, per department, and also do that on a regular basis. We see organizations that also do it on a quarterly basis to really make sure, and this takes time, of course, especially if you're a large organization, it's going to take time. Everything takes time, and D&I is a journey. It's not an end destination. We see extended paternity leave. Again, we're not only focusing on women, of course, but also on the male rights. There are initiatives, there are clubs, there are support, leadership. And if you look at international, then we have organizations that say, okay, we are an IT company. We have, for that reason, very imbalanced gender. And there needs to be a minimum 2 women per team, for example. Volvo also has done that. In every board, there has to be at least 2 women. If there are only male on this board, they have added two more, because you're not going to exchange people. That doesn't create a nice cultural environment, but you add. Also in terms of the recruitment, this is what we also see as executive search agents. Who is deciding who recruits at the end of the day? So if the people responsible for recruitment is very homogeneous as a group, they will naturally also recruit homogeneous people. So to really extend and make sure that that is also representing different genders, cultures, etc., you have a much higher chance of attracting and hiring a more diverse group of people. Other organizations looking at how they advertise the role. Men and women see things differently, different pictures, different wording, what is important for female candidates and what is important for male candidates. So when you are creating job descriptions, make sure, this is what this organization is doing, is to make sure that they are actually attracting to both genders. If we continue looking at generations, for example, in Spain, we have seen there's a lot of graduate programs, so to grow talent from within, that's fantastic. But there's also the reskilling or relearning and doing that together in different age groups. So we have seen organizations that, especially when it comes to app development, etc., to use two people from two different generations to then relearn this together or explore this together. And this is also a way of understanding how does someone two generations above me use their, how do they see the user interface of this app, for example, whereas as me and my, well, not me, but a person in their 20s would see that is different. So working also in-house across the different generations also promotes the understanding. We see organizations that do a boot camp, again, similar type of story. Inclusion survey, mandatory across many organizations. This also we have done in Sweden for many, many years. We see that also now in Germany and in Netherlands. It's included in the annual survey. Also understanding, again, the ultra flexible work hours. Of course, I think with the pandemic, we've seen a much more openness to this, but especially when it comes to the younger generations, they are much more interested in having very flexible hours. So a few organizations, and this is Slovakia, are really focusing on attracting the younger families. When it comes to the cultural backgrounds, we have organizations that really are focusing on it and really, let's say, putting a lot of emphasis on going beyond and hiring candidates that are maybe not ready yet, again, develop them in-house, but that also allows the pool of candidates to be larger. Many organizations are very customer-centric. We are seeing that many organizations are already very customer-centrically oriented, but again, mirroring the customers internally. So looking at who are our customers today, most importantly is who are gonna be our customers in 10 years or in maybe 5 years or maybe in 1 year. Are we actually mirroring those customers internally? So how could we then come closer to the market, be more competitive, understand our customers by having the people in our own organization? So this is, we see a lot of focus on mirroring and understanding customers. Through, well, for example, customer visits here we see. Another great organization, this is actually at headquarter level. It's a Spanish it's an Italian organization. They have let's say they have put in place that with each team, there needs to be at least one person that speaks each local language of the market that they operate in. So this is an interesting way of recruiting people. Of course, we can't put on a job description that we want someone French, but we can say that they should speak French. So the person maybe would then either be French or, like me, living in France/Monaco, where we speak French. So this is something then understanding again the cultures and having someone from a different cultural background. So there are different ways to get around having a more culturally broader workforce. Other organizations, this was one in Belgium, really focusing on the race awareness. So from 4 to 17 nationalities in 2 years, because they were actually actively driving having more variety in the organization and actually recruiting you can call it targets, quotas, or whatever word you want to use. But in order to make a change, in order to make a difference, sometimes, again, as I said before, there needs to be some drastic measures. The ambassador network, this is also an interesting topic that we usually discuss with our clients. Most organizations have ambassadors today, which is fantastic, diversity inclusion ambassadors, but where do they come from? What are their gender? Which generation are they from? Do they have different cultural backgrounds? And where do they sit in the organization? One of our clients we work with, more than 50% of the ambassadors happen to be in the HR department. So that is not a well-balanced ambassador network. It needs to be from all business units, from all divisions, and also all level of seniority, from management level all the way down. So this is also another way of fostering and managing diverse inclusion initiatives. When it comes to LGBTI, I would say Spain is definitely doing relatively well, even though there's a lot of room for improvement. We see a lot of course, support of the Pride Festival. We also see there are different kind of projects. They're also going back to what is the, well, not just sexual harassment, but unnecessary comments that are, let's say, shouldn't be welcomed. What is the protocol? Is it embedded into the code of conduct? Is it embedded into the contract, the employee contracts? What if the person is breaching these contracts? And we had also a couple of situations where this was not in the employment agreement, and then it's a little bit difficult to handle this. So with the D&I, they have now inserted this in all the code of conduct, and then it's also much easier to address it. We have some fantastic examples. I mentioned here the CEO of BNP Paribas Poland. Poland is actually a very, let's say, higher in resistance when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and especially when it comes to the LGBTI. So there is definitely a quite difficult resistance, but we have very inspiring leaders that are openly, very openly, and very driving it. And this, again, we will come to that later. The CEO and the management support is crucial. The board actually support is crucial for driving well diverse inclusion initiatives. We see also equality in the same-sex marriage. We also see equality in the parental leave and parental structures for heterosexual and homosexual couples. And this is for the Netherlands. The last one that I want to go through is the the neuro and physical diversity. Here again, there are programs. It's all about either to provide education or provide accessibility, not physically only, but also having access to work and being able to be employable. And this is what many organizations are working. Another organizations have one minimum one person per department that to be put in place. And again, a few years ago, quotas, the word quota is not very positive, but I think it's a target, and having these kind of targets, you're able to change. I'm going to give you some insights. So when we are working with our clients, we are doing both external assessment, understanding what organizations are doing, but we're also doing internal assessment, understanding what the people think, what have been done, what do they want to do in the future. And we, as you can see, we divide the employees in male and female, and people will think, well, that's weird because we are talking about inclusion, we're talking about diversity. But the fact is that men and women, as we can see on this slide, view these different pillars differently. So as you can see here, the female, in this case for gender, thinks that for the future, these are one of the most important pillars to address, to have more initiatives related to gender balance. However, in this case, the men in this organization actually think that's the least important pillar to focus on. So here, already here, we can see a bit of a misalignment on how this organization should move forward. So this is the reason why when we do this kind of assessment, we actually split men and women, because they do have different feelings and different ideas of how the organization should move forward. And thereafter that, we can then address that accordingly. just to give you a little bit of a snapshot. So again, I want to give you some inspiration of what we saw and what we heard in the organization. This is just what the participants in this case for our assessment said, you know, more open for disability. The sales network in this case, 8 out of 80 women out of 80 men, or 8 in total, of course, that needs to be maybe addressed with some quotas, with some guidelines. We see again the ambassadors, how important they are, because they are directly connected to the people. People are really asking for seminars, trainings, workshops. They want to know more about diversity and inclusion. They want to be included in it. They want to learn. They also want to be trained, because they also see how important it is, and also to advertise these values. So this is just to give you an idea of what outcomes of these kind of assessments and workshops, what it was. Now we're going to go through a couple of examples and see what Volvo has done. Obviously an organization that has done a tremendous journey already on diversity and inclusion. And I will let Lars present. You are on mute, Lars.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'm representing a very large company, Volvo, with 100,000 employees, and we have activities in something like 190 countries. So we have, of course, one situation in our company. But I will give you some examples, actually 6 examples of what we have done in different aspects of diversity inclusion, a little bit as an inspirations. There are many other activities or let's say situation, but the first one I think is quite interesting because that was Diversity Inclusion Week at the Volvo Group office in Poland, where a lot of people then from the office, let's say, joined in to have 1 week for building relationships and let's say acceptance, promoting diversity, and to bring it on the table. And I think in many cases, and Karine said it also, that it is a matter of, let's say, awareness and to be able to talk about it, and that is also coming to, let's say, employee satisfaction and so on. So I think this is one example of what can be done. I think it's a good example. If we take the next one, the next one is actually from United States, and it's another area: increased support of local communities, create allies. And this is a little bit also from the group values, that okay, there are a lot of values, but it's just to do it, not only to say it, but do it. And they are talking about this providing educational volunteer opportunities to take part, to help heal the communities in which we live and work. And we have seen that also in other projects here. This is also a good way to be out with the local communities, actually to improve the brand and also to attract people to a company that is working with D&I in a good way. And of course, this is something we must do together. So this is another, let's say, examples. If you take the third one here, this is actually from Volvo. Another, let's say, possibility. They did invite the vendors or partners for a session to actually discuss how they can, let's say, support Volvo in this case, the diversity and inclusion journey. I think this is another, let's say, way of doing it. 90 people attending and so on. So that was a very positive way, positive discussion, and this is, let's say, an eye-opener, you can say, and it was got a very, very good and positive remarks to take this initiative. Another one, and this is coming from the, let's say, very, very long time now, 2005. I mean, we have been working, and as I said, we have activities in all over the world, all continents, and many countries. And of course, we are extremely used to work with people from all over the world in all kinds of, as Caroline said, also the different pillars. So in this case, those LGBT issues were difficult to talk about. And okay, there are different views in different countries, sure, but the Volvo way of working and the Volvo, let's say, values is the same regardless where you are in the world. Then we know that there are some countries that are let's say, it's not as easy as it is in Spain or Sweden, for instance. But anyhow, the values are the same. So this is coming from the old time, and for most countries, this is not an issue any longer at all. And we do have the flag and the pride and all that. And it's a fully commitment from the top management in all aspects, so to say. The next one is then the discussion about the gender ratio. And in a traditional business like automotive, the gender balance is not 50-50 at all. It's maybe 30-70 or something like that. So this was a decision from our president in Volvo Buses, Anna, that recruiting new members to the company from now on should be 50-50 to improve quickly or quicker the gender balance. Even at 50-50, it takes time. But 50-50 is better than something less, so to say. So the interesting here is also that this has also created, let's say, a willingness to come to this company. I mean, Volvo Buses is one part of the big group. So there are, let's say, rings on the water that this is a company that are positive to this gender balance. And we have seen a lot of, let's say, positive remarks and comments on this. And the ratio is improving slowly, you can say. The last example is then another company, Global Trucks Technology, where they had an award procedure, so to say, where people in the organization doing a good job, and let's say you can call it ambassadors, you can call it allies. We have been working with that, Caroline and myself, a lot. And then you get an award. And that is also a very, very good recognition from the top managers. And then you spread the, let's say, the knowledge and the recognition, and people are engaged in working on those matters. So this was 6 very different examples, but I think they were all very interesting, and there are more to come, but this was for now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Lars. Okay, so we're going to continue on moving a little bit further in the assessment. So how do we assess? How do you measure progress? How do you measure success as well? This is our Kennedy Diversity Inclusion Maturity Steps. We have 5 steps, and when we work with our organizations, first of all, we would like to understand where they stand, of course, where they think they stand, at least, and also where they would like to get to, and how fast they're going to go through these different steps. And as you can see, there are clear, let's say, requirements to move from one. We have on the y-axis, we have diversity itself. So we look at, and I think when I speak to many of my clients, they say, well, we are 50-50 in the entire organization. Well, great, but what does it look like on the top? What does the board level look like? What does the board -1 level look like in terms of gender, cultural diversity, generational diversity, and so forth? So this is what we measure also on this axis: low, medium, and high diversity. And on the x-axis, we have the inclusion also. And here, of course, we have different measurement tools that we use. This is, again, has to be internally spoken with people from the organizations, of course, and also our clients. And then we are able to give, and let's say, an estimation of where your organization is, but also where your competitors stand. So just to give you a little bit, these are representing organizations. This is where we see Spain. So these 5 dots are representing many organizations that we have worked with in Spain already. And as you can see, they are in the awareness section, and they are going towards the leadership step. When we look then at other countries like Turkey, for example, Turkey is a young country with a lot of dynamic people. However, many of the larger organizations are really struggling with really making that step and making sure that the organization has the right training, the right information. So this is what we see in Turkey, and we do see it also in Greece. However, when we look at Poland, we have, as I said before, we have quite a lot of resistance, but we also have phenomenal leaders like BNP Paribas, for example, but we also have other organizations that really are trying to make a mark. They're really putting efforts in on the diversity side, having a much more diverse board, 50-50 on female-male balance, also from a cultural perspective. And then we look at Belgium. They are also, would say, more or less in the same area. Then we come to Netherlands, which are very definitely much more progressive, especially on the LGBTI community, but also for neurophysical diversity. Of course, they also on the gender balance, they are usually very high. And then we have organizations in Sweden. Of course, they have been working with these sections for many years. So of course, they are in a different progress. But this is a little bit gives a very good overview of where do we stand, and where do we stand against our competition. So this is how we work with our ladder. What we also want to really understand, and this is, again, we work with this and asking our clients, how would you assess your leadership team today in terms of the level of understanding of diversity and inclusion? We categorize people into 4 groups. We have people that are unaware. Let's say they are unaware of what they are unaware of, right? They are also people that are aware of what diversity and inclusion is. They understand it. They understand that it's important, but they don't really have the commitment. Commitment is when you actually do the efforts to make it happen, to make these changes. And when you have the desire, is usually managers or leadership people from the leadership team that have a family member that, for example, has a disability, or someone in their near surroundings that they actually have seen. And this is what we see a lot in our workshops. When you have witnessed this firsthand, you really have the desire, and this is really where the changes are happening. So we usually ask our clients, how would you assess your own leadership team? Where do people stand? CEO, in this case, this is a fiction. This is actually what could be one of our clients, but it's just fiction of numbers. Usually we have people from HR. They are always the desire of it. They understand the importance. Then we have other board members that are a little bit in these different boxes. We usually ask our global CEOs to also evaluate their leadership team, and it's usually quite interesting to see what they say. The importance to look here is that unless you are in the committed or in the desired box, it's very difficult to actually implement changes. So usually what happens, and this is why many organizations are a little bit frustrated why they aren't moving forward, is because too many of the board members or leaders, this can also be representing leaders of an organization, are either in awareness, unawareness, or in the awareness box. And it's not enough to just be in the awareness box to make things happen. So we need to move these people into the commitment box at least. And here we have very, very direct requirement, or let's say suggestions, recommendations to the global CEOs, and say, this needs to be put in the agenda. This needs to be included into one-to-ones with all the business unit directors in order for this to be of an important topic. And then there are many other actions underneath, but this is also what we see in the organizations that have been successful. We also work with something we call the Kennedy success factors. We have 10 factors that we work with, and we usually ask our management team to rate. So we use this kind of rating system the company has. Let's say CEO and top executive involvement and commitment, the company has some of it or it doesn't. And before we work with our clients, we usually ask them to evaluate themselves. And sometimes the answers come back and they are split. So they actually have a couple of board members that think that they have full support, whereas others say we actually don't. So already here, you start with a very interesting discussion on where do we actually stand. And we can see here why some of these organizations are further in our ladder is because they have strong metrics that are being followed up. They have targets set on many of these pillars to really make a difference. They have training, mandatory training. This is what Volvo has done before, mandatory training for all employees. We are usually with our clients in Southern Europe, it's usually mandatory for the management team, but not for the rest of the team, for example. So these are differences. Incentive structure is there. So you can see a little bit and get a feeling for, let's say, how we evaluate and also what difference it makes. So this is what it looks like in terms of from an organization point of view. So where are you heading towards? And this is, again, as I said in the very beginning, one thing is to really understand, okay, where do we stand today, but also most importantly, in which direction are we heading? So this is then coming down to our yearly targets, not targets from a pillar perspective, but where do we want to be in 1 year, in 3 years, and in 5 years, and then setting even on a sometimes a quarterly basis action plan, a really good action plan on what are we going to do in the next quarters, next years, in order to move the needle. And I usually look at it as you setting a train in motion. It takes a lot of effort to make it roll, but once it starts rolling, this is where things are, it's the journey and it's the motion going forward that we're looking for. We also get a lot of discussions on and a resistance on it's not organic. We are forcing things, and usually what we say is that when you set the train in motion, you have made changes, and you also see that things are progressing. You can actually, in a few years' time, you can actually go back to a much more organic way of growing, because then the diversity is there. You have an equal balance, you have much more international people from different cultures, you have people represented from many of these different let's say groups, and therefore the growth of the organization will be much more organic once you have again set the train in motion. So we are going to just to wrap up and to just go back to what we wanted to show today. We wanted to give you an overview of how Spain is doing on diversity and inclusion. I think Spain is definitely doing well, but there's a lot of progress that can be put in place. Of course, especially when we look at some Western countries, but as well as Scandinavian countries, they are a few steps ahead, and there are, as I said, very clear recommendations on what to do to move forward. Again, this was from a, let's say, from a benchmarking perspective. Some of these very hands-on examples hopefully gave some inspiration on what you can do or what you're maybe already doing, or a combination of the two. And again, it's as Lars said before, it's a journey. It takes time, so we need to make sure that there's momentum. We also want to make very clear that diversity and inclusion shouldn't be on the shoulders of the ambassadors. It should not be on the shoulders of HR. It's a management topic. It's not an HR topic. So it should be equally spread, also from a responsibility perspective. And this is what we see many of our clients are struggling with. Who owns this, let's say, this initiative, and how do you make it, let's say, how do you make sure that more people feel included, that feel that they want to drive it, and they also feel more responsible. So these are definitely big questions that we are helping our clients with. I'm very excited, and hopefully there might be some questions. I think Alvaro is going to manage. You can send questions directly to him. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Caroline. Indeed, we have a few questions that I've been actually keeping track of. Actually, you just mentioned HR and diversity and inclusion, right? And I've received actually two questions that we can group in one question, which is based on your experience working in D&I projects. Is the HR department the driving force? And second part of the question, do you think D&I should sit within the HR department, or should be a specific function that works cross-functionally, perhaps with all the other functions in the organization?
Yeah, I will answer, and I will also let Lars answer after, and from a Volvo perspective. As I just said, diversity and inclusion is a management topic. It's not an HR topic. We also see when there are, let's say, workshops being or trainings being promoted. We have actually one other example. I think it's a Swiss organization. They promoted the diversity and inclusion training only from the management team. So they were the one, let's say, initiating it, and they were also the one promoting the training. And because it came only from the management team, they had over 90% participation rate. So I think this is as a management topic, as I said, it should also be, of course, the board needs to be, the CEO and the board needs to be 100% on board, but it also needs to filter down through anyone that is leading a team, anyone that is recruiting people. This needs to be embedded into the leadership style of the organization. Yes, you are right. It needs to be, it's definitely on the table of HR, but again, the responsibility needs to be split. We do see in many, for example, in the US, most of large organizations have now a chief diversity inclusion officer, and then they have their own entire organization filtrating through the organization. So I think this is, and I also know that many organizations in Spain, I think you have the highest percentage in Spain of organizations that have hired people to handle and to manage diversity inclusion. But again, going back to, it's a management topics and not an HR. Lars, would you like to add something to that? I can
just support what you're saying. And I mean, many years ago, it was HR department that, let's say, took the initiative to work on topics like this. But then for sure, it went very slow. And if it's not high on the agenda, there are hundreds of other things. But today, there is a big change now. As I said, in Volvo Penta, for example, the CEO has pointed the direction for the whole management team and for the whole company. And now there is a very, let's say, good progress and a very positive atmosphere. So from the top and going down forwards, and also that the whole management team must take the full responsibility And as I said, they have to be on the commitment side or desire side. And this is a big job to get people, as you said, Caroline, to the right side of those 4 boxes. And this is a big job in itself. But when you're there, then things happen. Sure.
Very good. Thank you, Caroline and Lars. And another question that we have here is in regards quotas. And actually, myself quite surprised with this decision of Volvo, right? One of the divisions of Volvo of having a 50-50, which is a bold statement and a clear message to the market. So do you think quotas really work, especially for gender equality? Is perhaps the perception different in different countries as well?
Yeah, if I answer, I think there is different opinions about quotas. Some people are saying, no, it's not good to have quotas because you force something that is not natural, so to say. Or other people say, okay, if you don't do the quotas, like I mentioned today here, with this 50-50, nothing will happen. So I think it's very important to identify the local situation and the local, let's say, possibilities. I mean, in some organizations, let's say in a government, there could very well be, let's say, 50-50 more or less naturally. But then, as Caroline said, that, okay, then you have also to identify the different levels in a hierarchy, of course. But at the same time, you can say in traditional business like Volvo, if you just do a mathematical exercise, it will take you 200 years to come to a gender balance, so to say. So for a specific, let's say, situations, I think it's good to make this, that's a progress, to say now for a couple of years at least, we do this 50-50, because otherwise you will never have a change. So that is, let's say, my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think the word, let's say, the quota is very often used in the US. I would say with most European organizations, I see more, they call it targets, which I think is kind of the same thing, but it's just maybe a little bit easier word. But definitely, of all the organizations that we have worked with or that we have discussed with that have actually made a drastic change, they have used targets, because as Lars said, it doesn't happen organically. It's impossible to make a change without let's say, forcing the change. So and at the end of the day, most of our clients, they want to provide equal opportunity, as they say. And if there is no equal opportunity, then or if it isn't, let's say, a target set or some kind of guidance on how to get there, it won't be equal opportunity. So this is, and it goes back to, let's say, we look at 2 parameters with our clients. We ask them, if you look at the last 6 months of all the people that you have hired to the organization, what percentage of women and men is that? What age groups are they in? What percentage is, let's say, non-Spanish versus Spanish? You can also look at what percentage of that have a person with any kind of disability. You can't measure the LGBTQI in this regard, but then it tells you a little bit on which department is heading in which direction. Maybe there was one department that you can quickly see, then if you do this every 6 months, you will see clearly perhaps that it's driving in, let's say, in the wrong direction. We also ask our clients to do the same evaluation for the last 6 months, all the promotions that have been given out. What is the percentage of male, female being promoted in the last 6 months? And also looking especially then at the top layer, the board -1, the board -2, etc. What is the percentage being promoted? And my client just realized that last year 14% of women were promoted on the managerial level, and that of course does not provide equal opportunity again. So this is two very good parameters to evaluate per department, perhaps, who has been promoted and who has been recruited. Because if you just look at the company as a whole, most companies will say, well, we are 50-50, we have great diversity, etc., but it doesn't tell in which direction the company is going towards. And this is where the interesting part comes in.
Very good. Thanks, Caroline. I have another question here in regards of the challenges. And I think that at some point in the presentation, you mentioned one specific country where you actually, I mean, you found a lot of resistance, right? And the question is, actually, this person is asking about the challenges you have encountered, right, while helping companies in their D&I strategy, especially when it's a global strategy. So here, I understand that this person is especially interested in multinational companies with operations in different regions or countries.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest one of the biggest challenges we see and that our clients face is not having the management committed fully. This is by far the most important because it creates it's a ripple effect. The leadership of the management also drizzle down through the organization. So leading, you lead by example, and this, of course, with diverse inclusion. Then, if not your entire management is on board, you're not leading by example, so to speak, from a diverse inclusion perspective, and therefore we have very difficulty, and therefore creates a lot of resistance usually with other peers in the organization. So this is why we do this assessment, let's say awareness of diverse inclusion, to really understand where do we stand. And at one point, and this is the discussions we're having with another client, at what point do these leaders become unappropriate for the organization? Because if the more important diversity and inclusion is in an organization, it is part of the strategic initiatives of the company, you cannot then have leaders that are working against it. So at one point, if the people are not willing to change, maybe they are not supposed to be there in the long run either. And these are discussions we're having now at the moment as well, because it's part of part of values, it's part of the code of conduct, it's part of the entire the entire infrastructure of an organization. So yeah, these are the type of discussions we're having, and this is also by far, I would say, one of the biggest challenges we have with most of our clients. Lars, do you have something you would like to add to that?
No, I fully support that. It's rather clear. Management is the key.
Since we are approaching already the end of the session, one last question in regards to the different boxes or let's say maturity stages of the leadership team. I think that you mentioned, and here, so the question is, for the unaware people or the people that are aware, what are the most common unconscious bias that you have identified, right, within the teams that you have assessed?
Yeah, no, it's been very let's say interesting to have these discussions, and we've had quite a lot of really tough discussions with either team members or employees of organizations where, let's say, where it usually comes from, well, it comes from unawareness, it comes from fear, it comes from thinking that if you are as this person said, if I'm a white male, I will be discriminated, and this is usually what we are trying to deal with, or what we have to deal with. These are the biggest biases about diversity and inclusion in general, is that it's going to be a disadvantage for certain people, where we're actually just trying to create equal opportunity for everyone, and somehow this is translated back into fear. So when you go back, and this is what we are really trying, what we have done a lot, is go back to business. Let's look at diversity and inclusion in, let's say, two parameters. One is related to business, meaning how do we get ahead of our competition? How do we understand our clients better? How do we understand our customers? How can we provide services or products that are better suited for our clients or customers, so that so that the business will move forward. And this is very purely focused on the business side. Then on the other side, yes, then we talk more about the ethics about it, ethical perspective on how, including people of all majority and minority groups, looking at people that are, let's say, don't feel welcome, don't feel comfortable, etc. But this is a different, let's say, this is usually what people are struggling with. But when you talk business first, really focusing down on how can we use diversity and inclusion as an initiator, as an escalator to get the business going forward, then we have much more success in having them on board and understanding how they can utilize D&I as an not facilitator, there's another word that I can't find right now. So this is how we, let's say, and this is why this kind of the staircase, understanding what others are doing, is very useful, because it's practical. It's not fuzzy topic, it's a very concrete. So when you're concrete, it's easier to get people also on board to understand what we're talking about and what they can do to improve.
Very good. Well, thanks a lot, Caroline and Lars, for answering the questions. Just to wrap up, a couple of ideas or key takeaways on my side. Something that you said, well, D&I is a journey, not an end destination. And I think that this is important. Very difficult to go from 0 to 100 in a short period of time. It takes a lot of time and effort. Also, that the diversity is definitely, without any doubt, a management topic, not an HR topic. And probably lots of companies are failing because the diversity is still an HR topic only, and this is not working. And finally, quite happy to say that Spain is doing fairly well on a scale perhaps that goes from 1 to 5, and most of the organizations are between the 2 and the 3. So there's still a long way to go, but we're doing very well. And for instance, in the LGTBI, let's say, box, we are doing especially well versus other European countries. So that's actually very, very good news.
I would like to thank you, Caroline, thank you, Lars, Alvaro, and of course, thank you all of you to invest your time with us. I hope you enjoy the webinar, and I hope you can get some good insights in order to apply it with your companies regarding D&I. And see you all soon, and have a wonderful summer.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Adiós a todos.
Adiós.